Welcome to A Learner's Journey. My name is Molly Sanders, and the goal of this podcast is to inspire and motivate you by connecting you with a variety of passionate horsewomen and men who have dedicated their lives to helping horses and their people. I'm grateful you're here. For those of you watching this, I wanted to let you know that you won't be seeing the video of this little portion. I threw my back out this morning, so I'm actually not going to show the video of me talking to you right now. So you'll just hear the audio for this little part, and then when the interview with John begins, the video will start again. I'm excited that you've joined in to listen to this interview with John. John Baar is a lifelong student of the horse. He's a horse development specialist that travels the country teaching students natural horsemanship, and he's one of my favorite humans. In this interview, you'll get to hear about how it all started for John, how he's learned that slowing down is often the fastest path to progress, and you'll get a little glimpse into what life is like at Raising the Baar Center in Lexington, Kentucky, where he lives with his wife Kathy and their son Luke, and they all develop horses and welcome students. It's a fun and enlightening conversation, and stay tuned till the end, where we're joined by a very special guest. Good morning, John.
Hey, Molly, how you doing?
Good. It's awesome to have you on the podcast.
Great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm really glad you decided to do this. And I was trying to figure out the other day, like how long we've known each other. And I think it's been at least 10 years, maybe 15.
Yeah.
And I realized that I don't know a lot about how you got started with horses. So that's my first question. Like, how did you get into horses?
It's actually interesting because I didn't grow up around horses. I grew up in a little town in Colorado, right outside of Rocky Mountain National Park. And so we really couldn't have horses there. We lived really close to the national park. And, so we had about a 2-acre lot there, and we couldn't have horses on it. So I grew up mostly not having them. But ever since I was a kid, I wanted to be a cowboy. So growing up, there's pictures of me as I was 2-3 years old with a cowboy hat and boots and that sort of thing.
That's awesome.
So that image, I guess, kind of stayed through all the way with me. It wasn't until after high school that I started getting interested into horses. And my initial part with horses, growing up around Rocky Mountain National Park, there was a lot of dude string horses. So people would come in, from all over, and they would sit on a horse, and you went on this trail ride, so it wasn't very exciting.
Right. You go, this is easy.
Into more of the cowboy aspect of it, roping and cows and that sort of thing. And so it wasn't until probably 4 or 5 years after high school that I got my first horse, and things started happening from there.
That's awesome. And was your first horse, because I think one of the things that I find interesting is some people, their first introduction to horses is the trail ride or the dude string, the paid experience. Yeah. And they think, well, this is easy. I'll get one of these, right? So was your first horse, was it an easy horse to have, or was it challenging?
Well, so here's the interesting thing. I feel I met this nice elderly lady that was breeding horses, and she was doing it as kind of a remembrance of her husband, because her husband had passed away. And so she had built this farm where she was breeding, I don't know, maybe 70, 80 brood mares, and she had 3 stallions, and she was probably in her late 70s, really couldn't walk much, drove around in a golf cart, and she had nobody working for her.
Oh my gosh.
So somehow, some way, people would kind of come out, volunteer, and help her out to feed and help her breed these horses. She had a vet come out, and, and 70, 80 brood mares, that was a lot of horses.
That's
and
huge.
So pretty soon I got myself more and more involved, and she offered me this horse that was beautiful, nice, big bay horse. And she had really good bloodlines as I started researching, and thinking, gosh, this lady really, she's really thinking nice of me, gave me a great price on it. I thought, wow, I'm in it, and till I went to take that horse home. And I'll show you how much ignorance I had back before anything else. I saw that I had borrowed a horse trailer, and I had a horse, and I had a trailer. And 4.5 hours later, I was, just I could not believe that I could not get this horse in a horse trailer.
Yep.
Just totally did not understand why an animal, did not understanding prey, predator, none of that. It's just tug and pull, and why aren't you going in? This
Right.
trailer's made for you, right? I mean,
Right.
So I realized that nice little old lady was maybe not so nice to me in the fact that she knew what she was telling me. When I got the horse home finally, I remember having trouble with the horse. I had the farrier come out, and of course she was really misbehaved for the farrier, and he was telling me all the stuff, you got to get this horse better, or I can't come back out here, and those kinds of things. And again, it was one of those things that it was just like, wow, why would she be misbehaving?
Right.
Did I just buy a jerk horse or what?
Right.
And one of the things that did sell me on the horse was that she did say that she had it professionally trained. So I thought, oh, great, great investment. And I was going to breed her anyway, and have other horses and that sort of thing. So I remember riding her, she's been professionally trained. So I got a new saddle and all that. And I remember riding her out. And then, those times where you wake up in bed in the morning and you're kind of half awake, half not, you're dreaming. I remember doing that and thinking, gosh, I got a horse now. I'm going to go out and ride it. And yeah, that's what I'm going to do today.
Right.
And when I opened my eyes, I realized I was out in the middle of a field. And I had no idea how I got out there, where I was. I remember looking around going, I thought I was waking up in bed.
Oh my gosh.
I'm out in the middle of a field, and she's over there in the other corner of the pasture grazing. And, getting up, and I was stiff. And, I just bought a brand new cowboy hat, straw hat, and the back of it was just smashed to pieces. And I got up, and it took me a while to remember everything about it. And so It was kind of from that spot on that I realized, along with the not getting them in a trailer and the farrier, that I just didn't know anything about horses.
Right.
And I guess what kind of took me on the journey was, if I was going to be a cowboy, I needed to know about horses.
Right.
It wasn't going to be as easy as the movies and all that sort of thing. And it was kind of that point that was the tipping point for me, that I kind of made the decision I wanted to be good with horses.
That's really cool. And you needed to get a new hat.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
I did.
you then, probably, as I know of you, you're fairly competitive and you're really dedicated to being great at what you do. So you probably dove in. And then when along the way did you start thinking, maybe I want to become an instructor?
Yeah. Well, from there, I started researching how could I be good? Like, what do good people do with horses, And I picked up on a few of the events and that sort of thing. And, when I was competitive, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. Like, being good with horses was kind of a broad spectrum. I didn't necessarily want to go to be a reiner yet, or, a cutter, or any of those kind of disciplines yet. So I had actually come across in a Western Horseman magazine, Pat's program. And at that time, it was VHS tapes. And it was handy because my parents at the time owned a video store. So we were very involved with videos and VHS, for everybody that remembers those.
Yeah.
And so I had bought a 7 games VHS tape. And I was amazed. I was kind of skeptical, like, okay, can you really watch something from tape and learn?
Right.
But I was actually amazed at how much I was picking up and how much she was getting better. And I was learning how to be with a horse, and from there, it kind of snowballed. And that's about the same time the Pirelli program, Pat and Linda, were releasing their first levels program ever, early 2000s. And I had picked up on that and loved that. And I was a whole homeschool kind of an idea, I was doing really good with that and really enjoyed it. And I hadn't taken any clinics or lessons at that time. It was strictly all homeschool. And then I heard of a big 5-star Dave Ellis coming out, and it was going to be about 2 hours away from me. So I went out there with my dad, and I remember seeing Dave Ellis out there, and there was about maybe 20 or 25 people riding in there. And it was a very distinct moment again, kind of like when I had decided that I wanted to be good with horses, is that I walked in there and I saw all those riders with Dave Ellis, and I saw what Dave was doing. And I went, wow, I want to be a 5-star. I want to be that. And from there, that's when I wanted to be an instructor, and everything else was just focused on that, you know. And the main thing that got me interested in that whole system, and so I guess dedicated and passionate about it, it wasn't just, you know, I could watch the tape with Pat, and that obviously he was good with horses, right? And all of his students at that time, you could see a lot of the students, but that he could teach somebody to be that good, that they could teach somebody else to be that good.
Right.
And so that whole thing kind of just was a natural interest to me, or a phenomenon that you could teach something that you could pass along to be that good, to, you know, the trainer idea. Yeah. And so I think along those really is what got me interested in instructing. I wanted to be, it was kind of that next level of being good for me was, could I be good enough to help someone else, not just myself, but help someone else. And then later on that evolved to, could I be good enough to help somebody to be good enough to help somebody, you know? Right. So that's kind of what started me on my journey there.
That's really cool. I didn't know that about Dave Ellis being the one that kind of got you going. I want to do that. That's really cool.
And, you know, it's funny because it probably wasn't till, I bet you it was 10 years later. Like, I never took a lesson from Dave. I just audited that clinic. I think maybe I'd introduced myself, but I wasn't nothing then, you know? And, from there, he didn't come back in the area for a while, or at least not that I saw when I was in timing, but, you know, I probably didn't take a lesson from him or anything until much, much later on. So it was interesting that he inspired me, but I didn't even, you didn't even see me with a horse or anything like that.
Yeah, that's really cool. So along the way, I mean, I think that it's going to be interesting for people to hear this, and, you know, especially people that know you, to hear, you know, how it all started, because you're now at a place that, you know, students watch you and it's like, oh man, it came so easy, or, you know, he has it everything is so easy for him. Right. But if they only knew. Right. So I'm really curious to hear about, you know, along the way, I'm sure, well, you've already told us some of the challenges with your first horse, but, you know, as you've got this huge aspiration of, you know, reaching a level of this person that inspired you. And then, you know, reality hits, right? You start running into the things that don't come easy. Can you share, is there a story that pops into your head when you think of a learning struggle? Or, you know, can you just share a little bit about what was hard, and then how did you push through? Like, what got you to keep going?
Yeah, absolutely. There, in the beginning, I very much, probably like most people, it's natural for us is to just be a very, you know, A to B type of thinker, you know, and not really thinking about individual or horse's unique characteristics or any of those kinds of things. And I had bought, you know, from this mare that I had originally gotten, I realized that I was taking her far, but like most people, she was the issue, right?
Right.
So I had actually bought an easier horse, one that was already being shown in roping, and that's where I thought I'd want to go, is to be a roper. And so I bought a finished roping horse, and I didn't know at the time what a finished roping horse meant, which later on now I learned that he backs into a box, goes hard to the left, and that's about all you got. Right? There was no right circles, there was no trotting, there was no relaxation, there was no anything else. So he's actually the one that I took through the levels program first. And with him, now I know him to be a little bit more, as we'd say, like a right brain introvert. Like, he was a very nervous, but very obedient, tons of tries, such a great little horse. But I remember I was working on some tasks, and it was mostly at Liberty, and he was always taking off away from me. Oh, and that was so frustrating, right? But I remember that you had to send him on a circle and get a couple laps of canter, and then change direction, finally change, and then, you know, go the other way. And I remember he just had a hard time cantering in the round pen. And what I realized is that I had the little bugger so darn tight and nervous and worried that he was just getting tighter, and he was kind of like hopping along like a little cartoon character. Like, he just didn't have this stride at all. He was, you know, right. It was just more like, why aren't you cantering? What's wrong with you? You know? So I think he taught me a lot about, he was so obedient. But, you know, to get a horse just to relax and actually enjoy it, he was definitely the first one that kind of, you know, hit me in the face with that one, you know? Right.
Yeah. That's hilarious.
You know, as far as it coming easy, gosh, no, I feel like I feel like I'm actually naturally not very talented at all with horses, or it doesn't come natural to me at all. Because I feel like I've had to hit every single roadblock, things you've ever done wrong. Like I've done all that and
Right.
continue to do all that. And so I don't think that, for people that have never really hit those hard bumps, I think they're probably, it comes a lot easier to them than it does me. I think as far as some of my teachers like Pat, I think I've been Pat's biggest challenge for years, just if I can get this guy to get it, well then, I watch out world, because it's definitely been a struggle of just hours and hours and hours of thinking and trying of how else can I do it and that sort of
Right.
thing.
Right. And I think I think it's so interesting to hear from different people, because like you said, some people that it comes easy to, somewhere along the line, if you stick with it, they're going to hit some bumps too. And one of the things that you're really talented with is being a learner and sticking with it and getting through those bumps. So that, I mean, you've become someone, again, like I said earlier, that I think, I've been with you on the ranch many times with all the instructors, and you're off, riding along, and it just looks seamless and it's beautiful. And, it's easy to see you and think that, you're one of those people that just didn't have any roadblocks. You got the easy horse, all those things. But I think as I've gotten to know you and then hearing you today, one of the things that you must have gotten really good at is getting up again and pushing through and learning from those bumps. And is that something that has come naturally to you, or have you had to work at that? Like, how do you stay in a learner's frame of mind?
Yeah. That part I think has probably come a little bit more natural for me. That greediness, I think that there's probably a give up button in me somewhere, but it's pretty deep down. I really haven't found it too many times. So I guess for some people that could be a stubborn streak,
Mm-hmm.
but I've always probably been that way. Once I set my mind to it, one way or the other, I'm going to get it. So if I can set my mind to a positive of I want to be good with horses, then that's really what's driven me the whole time, and still to this day is still what drives me with horses, is because I don't compete nearly as much as my wife Kathy does.
Mm-hmm.
I don't I like competitions. I'll go to a few. I like even on my first Pirelli application, I wanted to be I put on there that because they asked about discipline or what did you want to do with horses, and I literally did put on there I want to be good with horses, English Western driving, to be able to look at any issue and know how could you solve that? How could you go about that? And so I wanted to learn a little bit about each discipline. About, there was nothing about horses I didn't want to learn or know about. So I wasn't going to go into one sport or discipline or anything like that. And so in having that drive me of being good, there was the minute I come up against something that I can't do or what, just fuels that fire even more. Like, oh, I came up against something else I can't do, and I guess that's part of the hunger that I guess I can never get full of.
Right.
Because I know there's just so much, and the more you learn, the more you realize there is to learn.
Yeah.
So it's like, geez, I'm running out of time.
Right.
There's so much to do yet.
Right. That's so cool. So, staying, like, it sounds like you stay, the goal stays forefront. Like you're like, I want this. And I know that there's going to be hardships. And when there's hardships, I want it even more. So that's really cool. Yeah. So what's something that horses have taught you about yourself?
To actually probably slow down, because as much as that drive and that ambition that I can have, it can also be the detriment of me on some horses.
Right.
That I actually have to slow down, take the time. That the saying, if you take the time it takes, it'll take less time. And that kind of even goes back to the story that I was just sharing about you with my first horse through the levels. That's all I needed to do with him, was just take a little bit more time.
Right.
A little bit more time, just being with him and just letting him go out there and find some comfort in those circles.
Right.
But I was taking I was taking a lot more time. In fact, that I was putting more hours in there. You know, I was doing that kind of time,
Right.
but it was time doing, not just time being, I
Mm-hmm.
guess.
Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely, and even to this day for different horses that we get in for development or whatnot, just finding that balance of how much do I need to do, and then how much time do I just need to be with you to just let you find that comfort, find that relaxation, those kinds of things. So I think that, and that can be a bigger life lesson, of course, you know. So
Right.
my ambition, my impulsion is always one of those things that probably can get in my way.
Right.
Um, but finding certain horses where you just have to wait a little bit longer and that sort of thing. And now some of the best compliments I can get is that, oh, you're so patient. But it's actually not, again, it's not an innate thing. It's something that I've had to learn by
Right.
hitting my head on the wall so many times, learning, you know, it's getting worse. I'm actually having to put more hours in, excuse me, because I'm doing more than I need to, you know.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
it's kind of taken me on a fun other journey that's probably my biggest passion now, along with being good, because I realize that being good with anything is being efficient.
Mm-hmm.
So if I had to say my biggest competition now, or the thing that I strive for now, is how efficient can I be with horses? So
Interesting.
whether it's a horse that comes in for development, or, you know, the next horse that I have, or anything like that, how can I get the most out of it for the least amount of time in it? So then I have to it causes me to have a better plan,
Mm-hmm.
because I can't just go out there and start messing around doing the same thing I've always done with that horse, because then I'm wasting time, right?
Right.
You know, how much time do I need to just be with this horse here? How much time, you know, like how can it, so at the end of, 30 hours or 50 hours, have I gotten that horse to be the most confident, the furthest along that I can get him in that period of time
Mm-hmm.
there? So that's kind of my newest puzzle, is being efficient, you know, because I think that's the next level of good for me anyway.
Right. And that's an interesting word because, I mean, one of the things I've struggled with is slowing down and not letting the goal get in front of the relationship.
Yeah.
And when I think of efficient, I think of speed, right? Which is what you're saying. But
Yes.
but because of what you have learned, sometimes the fastest path to something is to slow way down,
Yeah.
right? And spend more time being, as you said. So that's really interesting. So have you come across a horse where you just knew that I need to spend however much time, like an hour, whatever, I need to put as much time as it takes into just being with this horse until something unlocks and I can move forward? Or do you find, is that still a challenge, to spend that time just being with them, thinking about being
Yeah.
efficient?
Not as much anymore.
Okay.
You know, like, in the beginning, gosh, if I was getting so impulsive and I always had to be doing something, you know, I might get my phone out or check on my phone or something, you know, like, all right, I'm going to give you your time. Fine, I'll give you your time, but I'm still going to get over here. And I realize that that's still not helping, because, well, you know, I can't disconnect from a horse if I'm asking them to connect with me so much.
Oh
Right?
boy.
So keeping that connection with that horse, but finding all the little things fascinating, if they eat grass, what's the pace that they eat grass at? You know, what is their eye doing? All that body language stuff of reading the horse that we've learned, you know, just getting fascinated about that and really emerging myself in with that horse. That way I'm still doing, and I can do stuff at a rather fast pace in my mind. You know, like, why did you swish your tail there? Why did you choose to eat that grass? If your ears flick one way, why did it flick? Oh, that bird flew away. You flicked an ear on it, you know? So it can still keep this very fast pace, which is usually where my mind works.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess the outside picture would be like, well, John's just standing with a horse out there.
Right.
But in the interim, I can learn a lot about that horse and hopefully build more and understand him or her more as we're just hanging out there doing those things, you know? So it's
Yeah.
not as, I guess, just more redirecting my energy and not necessarily trying to shut it down, but in a positive way that can still fit my game, you know?
Right. And still teach you about that horse. You're observing them, seeing their reactions.
I think that's so interesting that you mentioned that about the phone, because for quite a while, I've done that as well. I've been like, okay, I need to spend some time just hanging out. So I'm going to spend 10 minutes checking my email and, while my horse gets to eat grass. And just recently, a few months ago, I've got a fairly challenging horse for me. And I had taken him to a place to get some support. And he was in a stall with a run and he was having trouble. He wasn't near any other horses. And so I decided to hang out there with him. And I was looking at my phone. And then I thought, you know what? I thought that same thing that you just shared, that how can I expect him to be connected if I'm looking at my phone? And so I put the phone away and I don't know, I was more present and I was observing him, and he totally changed. And it blew me away that it could be that powerful. Yeah. But it's similar to when you're sitting with someone, when you're sharing space or time with someone and they're on their phone, you can feel that disconnect.
Sure.
Versus you don't have to be talking to somebody, but if you're both sitting there looking around, there's a connection there. So that's a new realization for me. So I think it's really cool that you mentioned that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I'll share a little bit with you on where I got that idea. Mm-hmm. I had actually done some clinics way back when, because before I got involved with Pat, actually the first kind of cowboy horseman fits under the natural horsemanship category was Martin Black. Mm-hmm. And I had actually done a colt start with him. And that was back kind of real still in my ignorant days. And he knew that I didn't know much because I was doing a colt start with him. And this was not a class. This was a job for him. Mm-hmm. And we were supposed to be his assistants in there. Mm-hmm. And he watched me carry a saddle up to a colt that he had, was getting ready to do their first saddling. He was on horseback and he had the lead rope of the horse. And, I walked about 6 feet and he said, "Son, you haven't been around colts very much, have you?" I said, "No." Okay. Like he watched me just walk, and he already knew that I hadn't done many colt starts. Right. Mm-hmm. And he had talked about, he had, of course he had married Ray Hunt's daughter. So he's very familiar with Ray Hunt and Tom Dorrance and those kinds of things. And he had talked about Tom Dorrance recommending a book for everybody to read called Kinship with All Life. And so I remember way back then I read that book, and it was one of the goofiest books I had ever read. I didn't really understand it, but he also said, Tom was very different because Tom was hard to have just an open conversation with about horses. He was always very much in the moment. And he would even say, "Well, did you see there, 2 flies on the fence post? Why do you think that one flew off first? And why do you think this one's turning around here?" And, he was just so in the moment of reading those things that it was tough to ever kind of have a conversation because he was always so present like that. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of got me interested of reading the horse, of thinking, there must have been something that Tom had, that special thing that Tom, everybody always talks to anybody that, whether it's Pat or anybody that knows Tom, they always said there was something special about him. Mm-hmm. And kind of between that book and hearing stories like that, that's kind of what got me to be in the moment of thinking about, all right, why did you do this? And why is nature this way? And those kinds of things. So I definitely took that from seeing that story of Martin Black and Tom and applying that to the horse. Why was that? And it's almost kind of like a rhetorical question, because you may not necessarily know, but I guess just asking the question, why or what if, those kinds of things just kind of take you down a different journey.
Yeah, that's really cool. Is that the book that a fly is a character?
Yeah.
He's got the pet fly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a wacky one.
The whole thing about thoughts and, talking to animals and that sort of thing, please go away, please quit annoying me, Frankie the fly. So
right. That's right. Yeah. I remember being fairly perplexed when I read that one too.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Now it's time for a short commercial break. I'm excited to share that on November 20th, Shine a Light Productions' next virtual clinic begins. I'll be partnering with Aaron Sauer of Elite Equine Massage LAMP to bring you a 4-week learning experience called Winning Your Horse's Heart, Strengthen Your Bond Through Bodywork. Aaron has a set of exercises we're calling affections to try with your horse. These affections don't require technical knowledge and are easy to apply, and you won't need to worry about getting them wrong. It'll be a fun way to spend time with your horse, learning to do things they love. Learn more at shinealightproductions.net. And now, let's get back to the interview.
So you and Kathy and Luke are, you've got the Raising Baar Horsemanship Center.
Yes.
And you guys, pretty much that's your work. You've got horses there in training. You're, doing this as a family. You're traveling and teaching clinics too. And what is, I think everybody looks at that and thinks, oh, that's so wonderful that you guys are all doing it as a family. What do you love about it? And then what's challenging about it?
Gosh, what do we love? What don't I love about it? It's kind of a semi dream coming true. It's something that we've dreamed about, talked about, and loved to do. And, when I look back on the journey of getting to the place that we're at now, I don't know how we did it.
Yeah.
But we're doing it, and it's nothing big or fancy, but it's us, and it's very much us and what we do. So large part of because horsemanship is such an obsession for both of us, Kathy and I, that it's got everything involved in horsemanship, horse development, teaching, we're on the road back and forth. And so it stays fairly busy as a whole. But for Kathy and I was lucky enough and fortunate enough to marry a woman that is obsessed as I am about it, because that's most of our lives, right? I mean, it's most conversations, most things we relate back to, it's somehow to how to relate that back to horses or teaching.
Right.
So,
right.
That's probably all the great aspects of it. You can just lose yourself in the midst of it. The challenges, of course, are all the challenges that can come with owning your own place,
right.
the maintenance and the upkeep and those kinds of things, and us not having a huge financial background, that could support all that just to go and have that done.
Right.
And it's probably a little bit intimidating, especially for where we're at, because just 3 driveways down from us, is TaylorMade Thoroughbred Farms.
Oh, wow.
And they're probably the largest thoroughbred farm in Lexington. In fact, the horse, you could see the barn where California Chrome lived for a while, which, he was America's richest horse. He had earned more money than any other horse. So wow. They have an unbelievable, it almost seems like a endless pocketbook to have the fanciest of barns, stalls, flowers, just guys that do nothing but, decorate around the barns and that sort of thing, So, as you go by, and there's just hundreds of those types of barns up around this area. So when you see those kind of just very fancy, paved driveways and flowers everywhere and just the, no dust or dirt everywhere, it's can get a bit intimidating that way. But the upkeep of that, I guess the other part is to make sure that making sure that we keep enough family time, so we literally schedule in, family days, where it's just to go and get away. Just the other, yesterday we went up to and watched a baseball game, a Cincinnati Reds game, took Luke to his first baseball game, just
fun.
Do something that's other than horses or whatnot, but making sure that we make that time for us and that sort of thing,
right.
Probably the biggest challenge, because it's easy for us just to keep going on and on and on. And go.
Yeah, it's never finished.
That's right.
Especially the work around the place.
Yes.
And I think it's it's easy to see places like that and think, oh, if we had a ton of people that could plant everything and mow everything and take care of everything, but I hope that there are people at those places that love being there. Like sometimes you get around places like that and it's no one's really enjoying it. It's like they're putting it on for somebody else. And the magic about your guys' place is there's love in it. I haven't even been there, but just watching the videos and seeing it develop, it's like, and you even said it's us, it's, and I just think that's so great. And you guys are enjoying it, and for the most part, right?
And trying to make it as enjoyable for all the horses that come here too.
Yeah.
And that's been something else that we have gotten feedback on that's really nice, because we've had horses where they people have been to barns where everything's very loud because horses are just hollering and pawing. There's just a ton of noise from the horses there. And most of the time, even those horses that come that first are hollering, and calling out and all those, usually within a day, it's back to just peace. Because then, usually we keep, a dozen or so training horses in, and we usually have about a dozen or so of our own and, our long-term student horses. So, there's 20, 30 horses on our place, but you wouldn't know it for one or two because there's just always this nice, peaceful, quiet munching of hay sound and that sort of thing. So that I like that energy that our barn can build, and that it's becoming the energy around the horses, that it's just chill out. Yep. And, we try and keep a controlled chaos as part of our training program for our horses, is that there's always things moving and coming around. So you're going to have to get used to it as a horse,
right,
coming and going, that you don't have one stall, you don't have one paddock. So when horses come here for development 24/7, you're going to learn like us. So it's not just go to your stall, come out, do your session, then go back into that stall, which is what I think creates a lot of those kind of displaced behaviors anyway in a horse world. So coming here and going on ties and then going into this paddock and then coming over here and going back into that stall, it just starts to create this, I guess I'm just going over here for a while kind of mentality. I really enjoy that about our place, that it can just be nice and quiet for horses and humans,
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. So with the horses that you have in development, is there one or maybe more, but can you think of one that kind of sticks out as it was particularly challenging, and what was the challenge and how did you go about helping the horse through it?
Yeah. Yes, definitely. For some of the horses we've gotten in, it's kind of been like last chance saloon almost, it's we don't know where else they're being kicked out of this barn, or we've gotten kicked out of that barn and we don't know where else to take them, so can you help us, kind of a thing, whether they're natural horsemanship, Pirelli or not. We've gotten a lot of people that have just, luckily for us, heard about us through the wind somehow. And so we did have a horse that came in that was probably the most unique horse I had seen. He had been kicked out of a couple different barns. He was fairly aggressive and had biting grooms. And the last straw was that he kicked a vet and broke her arm. So that was kind of the can you take him kind of a thing. And he was meant to be he's bred to be a Grand Prix jumper. And so his dad, he was an interesting mix of a lot of things that weren't in his realm. That his dad was a cloned horse, and then the mare had complications in having birth. So then she had died. So then he was an orphaned horse.
Oh wow!
And he was just probably the most unnatural. And then he was always kept in a stall and kind of not done anything with, but except for taking kind of from paddock to stall kind of a thing. And so he was very unnatural as a horse. Just didn't know how to be a horse. And he was a big gray thing. And so he was aggressive and bitey, but he was never a mean horse. That's the thing. He was a very gentle-natured horse, but he'd bite you. But it was more kind of like a big oof kind of a play. And so he was a bit of a challenge as he coming in, because I remember one time I had him out in the pasture, and I was dumping the manure spreader out there. So tractor and manure spreader, which can cause a rather large ruckus. He came cantering from the other side of the pasture and came up and was biting and charging at my tractor. Like actually scratches on my tractor hood from where like his teeth came down on the hood.
Wow.
As the manure spread is going and all this chaos. I mean, so he just didn't have very much natural prey animal in him.
Right.
He was very much just kind of like a big dog, in that fact. So he was a bit of a challenge of renaturalizing him, but yet still trying to make him safe enough. Because I knew he was going to go back to a show world. They had high hopes for him to make him a Grand Prix jumper. So to see if I could renaturalize him enough to be a horse, but yet still be good enough to go back into that type of environment, be obedient enough for anybody to kind of handle and that sort of thing. So he was a bit of a challenge for us, but
it sounds like it.
Good experience for me. I enjoyed it.
So what was the important piece in the renaturalizing process, and what is that for people that don't know? Like what is that?
For us, we can get a fair amount of horses in that just have never gotten a chance to be a horse.
Okay.
So because of value or sport, they pretty much, people are trying to do the best that they can, which is protect them, and usually is being human and people and protecting our value and that sort of thing. It's usually more isolation and a lot of control, trying to control situation, control them, isolate them so that you're trying to prevent a lot of accidents from ever happening. But just kind of like kids and horses, the more you do that, it gets everything a bit worse, because they don't learn very much how to have self-preservation.
Right.
So in having horses that are been isolated to stalls and those kinds of things, getting them back where they can be turned out with other horses, turned back out and just to pastures, those sorts of things.
Right.
Where that's okay, where you can feel like they're not going to go running on a tear through the pasture and go through a fence or get themselves really hurt or strain or pull something, so little by little, how can you take where the horse is at and go, okay, my whole goal is, can you just eat grass out in the pasture?
Right.
Both even dietary, how can I slowly get you back there? Well, how many steps is it going to take so that I can trust you that mentally, emotionally, and physically you're going to be okay out there, and just implementing that in slowly but surely, with other horses, so that you can be in with, horses that are maybe a little bit more dominant or more submissive, and you fit right in. You know how to socialize with other horses. You can read their body language, because it sounds funny, but we had one horse that came in that was from the Northeast where, they had a lot of sand up there where it was never grass. So the horse really did not know how to graze.
Oh, wow.
It always had been fed in hay bags. So I had noticed, like, we had turned him out and worked our time, but he was never grazing. I thought, oh, he's just not comfortable yet, and kind of watching him. And then I put a hay bag out, like a hay net hanging, and oh my gosh, he took after it. Like, thank you. I was so hungry, like, why are you starving me? Why could you have all this grass? Well, it actually took him a while to learn to actually graze, put his head down and graze, because it's just something that I imagine he's never really done, So going back to just, if it's first renaturalizing them, just to, again, kind of be a horse in a natural environment, in a field, sure, you can go for a run in the pasture, but can you manage your emotions where physically you're not going to get hurt, mentally you're not distraught, those kinds of things. And then starting to renaturalize now of with horses and humans, because I think in the horse and human journey, I think that we're not trying to make horses think like people. So it's not about getting the horse prey animal or unhorse-like, I think it's us working with that nature that's important. So I think that's why it's important for a horse just to learn how to be a horse first, because everything that I think that we do with a horse is based off of that, of you being a good balanced horse first. Now, how can we interact with that and come together as a partnership?
Right.
So, versus trying to get a horse less away from being like a horse so much, kind of thing,
Right. And with that horse that you mentioned, that the jumper that was orphaned, like, did you need to turn him out by himself first and have the other horses in neighboring pastures, or did you turn him out with one, or how does that work?
We did, and I have a couple really easygoing horses. Like, I have a pair of mules, and they're really good buddies. They're not really one to be picked on, but they're also not one to really pick on another horse. So they can be good buddy horses to start with. And so I'll usually start with them and just kind of see how do they start to react with the mules, and if they're really, the mules will chase you off or whatnot if you're really rude, I guess, in a horse world, so they will move them off or bite another horse, but I would imagine it'd have to be pretty rude for them to do that. So usually I'll start them off with mules like that and just kind of really easygoing horses in a little bit bigger area, and then slowly integrate other horses in, so that if I know that, there's going to be two, if I feel like that horse is pretty dominant and I know another horse is, how are they going to react? Sometimes I'll play with those horses together, in a round pen or something, so that they both have to kind of focus on something I'm asking them to do instead of getting in trouble, maybe like two teenage boys, that have a job instead of just going out with each other, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah.
And then usually after, if you can have a few sessions and they can learn how to move around with each other, that starts to help to build more and more. And same with mares that get really cranky with other horses, want to kick and that sort of thing. I'll usually have a lot of sessions, liberty sessions with other horses in there, and the more that they're worried about the other horses, the more I'll have them do.
Right.
And then, that just kind of starts helping them get used to, it's part of a colt starting that we have anyway in here, that, they just get horses, used to bumping around and, carrying saddles in and, bumped into your bum and, you got to run up on another horse and, I won't go that far. And,
right.
And, of course, I'm doing it with horses' health in mind because, we don't want horses to get hurt, but slowly but surely integrating that to for horses to learn where's everybody's personal bubble and that sort of thing can help out.
Right. And you're, like you already said, you're giving them something else to focus on. They don't have time to think about kicking each other or doing those kinds of things. You've given them, like, you've got to go forward and find harmony together. And that's really cool. So I'm curious how that gray horse did with the mules. Was it no big deal? Or?
He wasn't. He was actually pretty good with horses. He just never, he was not real high on the pecking order. But the thing that he had challenges with, if I put him in a smaller paddock, as horses would start to pin their ears at him saying, hey, move away, he would go to the worst spot instead of the best spot.
Okay.
So, like if there was a clear open door, like, hey, as a horse, you'd want to go over here.
Right.
He would go over here and put himself in a worse predicament, than whatnot. So his decisions weren't always the best, so that's probably what he had to work on the most. Was going, this probably wasn't a good idea to put myself in a smaller area or smaller predicament than the bigger one. But he did good. And, he went off to have a jumping career. They sent me a video of him at a jumping barn at his first show a while back. So he did get all the way up to going to a show,
That's really cool. That's really cool. So how do people learn with you? Like, can they come there? How, if they want to come and learn more, how do they go about that?
Any way possible.
Okay.
We still travel around. We're always interested in going to new areas, meeting new people, learning, as much as they can. Here, yes, we run usually about a clinic a month here, and we run 2 camps, 5-day camps or what we refer to, one in the spring and one in the fall, here at our facility. And so we have people come from, it's funny because probably most of the people still travel from out of the state of Kentucky for horse development and students more than we probably have in the state of Kentucky.
Interesting.
So this is the first year that we're actually finally starting to, I guess, bring more local people in and starting to get known around the Lexington area more.
Right.
And outside, because we have done so much traveling all those years outside of Kentucky that we know more people outside. So we'll get people that come from, we've had people have come from California and stuff like that, take a bit of a bucket list kind of a trip and go, I've always wanted to travel with horses, and great, we're going to come out for your camp and, take 3-4 days, whatever, to come out to Kentucky and get to see the area. Lexington it's why I moved here. It's probably one of the most unique towns that I've ever been in. Very horse related, and of course more thoroughbred and racing, of course. But as that not necessarily dies down, but finds a bit of a balance, you find more English, a lot of English rider big jumping barns, big dressage barns that are moving into the area. But it's such a unique area, just overall in the history behind it and stuff, that I really like Lexington. There's so many cool things with the horse park, and that's kind of how we found our place, is that when we were looking up in this area, we basically drew a circle around an hour of the horse park. And okay, if the property's outside that hour to the horse park, we don't want to look at it. As long as it's in that hour to the horse park, we'll look at it and see what we can get and that sort of thing. So to me, that's one of the coolest places around, with some of the biggest events and that sort of thing. So I enjoy it.
That's really cool. So people can really, like, if they come to you, it can turn into a whole horse vacation. They can go and tour some places, and that's cool.
You can see some really top thoroughbred farms and a lot of history in that area. And Keeneland Racetrack is probably one of the prettiest tracks for a racetrack. And it's not where the Kentucky Derby is ran. That's in Churchill Downs in Louisville. But Keeneland's usually where they film all the movies. So if you've seen any of the movies like Secretariat or any of those, most of the filming is done at Keeneland because it's so much prettier.
Oh, wow.
And even they'll do it for different races there, but it's a very pretty area.
That's cool. Yeah, you guys have landed in a special spot. So
it is.
Very cool. So I heard that there might be somebody else there that would be willing to come and chat with us a little.
Hey, that'd be pretty cool. Hey, Luke, you want to come chat with us?
Special guest. There he is. Hi, Luke.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Pretty good.
Good. So quite a few people are getting to know you through the videos that you and your mom and dad put out. But I have a couple questions for you. First of all, how old are you?
I'm 8 years old, just about to turn 9 on August 19th.
Wow. So coming up on 9, very close on to 9. And you've basically been around horses your whole life.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And you are, you've started this program called Luke's Littles. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What is that?
Well, Luke's Littles is kind of to help the person and the horse.
Okay.
It's kind of to help the horse and the person in the aspect of them not having to fight or stuff like that, and kind of just get along smoothly.
That's great. And that's an easy thing to say, but not so easy to do, huh?
No. We've had 1 or 2 really tough minis.
Yeah. And the chocolate chip. So the littles part, tell us about that for people that don't know anything about what you're doing. What does the littles part mean?
Well, the littles is for like the little minis, since they're littler than what my dad does. It's like kind of my business, but more with littler horses.
Yeah. That's great. So you're bringing in minis and like ponies.
Yeah.
As well, yeah, that's wonderful. So I followed a little bit about your journey with Fajita, who is a pony that you brought in. What's something that you feel like you were able to teach Fajita?
Probably how that he kind of needs to try to turn loose to our idea for us to like give him a break or stuff like that.
Great, because
he's challenging. He, even for got old dad head scratching here, because he's probably one of the most high spirited horses in general that I've come across.
Wow.
So Luke came across a real challenge horse.
And how did you find him? How did he come to you?
Actually, through Tick Maynard, who's an eventer and whatnot. Kathy was doing a bit of a clinic and some lessons down at his place. Mm-hmm. And he had come across a horse that he was looking for another buddy horse and possibly a horse for their
2-year-old son.
2-year-old.
Okay.
And they had someone had found this horse at an auction or whatnot, and brought him to him. And then he had him for, I guess, maybe about a year, but wasn't having much success with him, not doing much with him. So he thought Luke could start to put on him. And he's been a good challenge for Luke. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's really cool. And is he still at your place?
He is.
Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. And what's something that you've learned from him, Luke?
Probably how difficult horses can be, and to just keep trying until like it takes a little bit for me to think and say, what am I doing? I need to think about how to do this horse, because he's definitely the difficultest horse I've had.
Right. And it's nice, I'm sure, that when you are like, you might do a session with him and then you're thinking, something different needs to happen. I need to do something different. Yeah. Is it nice to be able to chat with your mom and dad and share that's really cool. So do you think, will he be there for a while longer? Like, what's your goal? What are you hoping to have?
My goal is to get him to be a good riding pony and a kind of an okay driver.
Okay.
And just a good horse to like be around, groom on, rub, hang out.
Yeah. That sounds great.
Catch.
Yeah. That's been challenging too, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was definitely a horse that was very hard to catch. You could feed him, like for the last year, they had been giving him a lot of treats.
Yeah.
So he was good at giving treats, but not so much about putting the halter on and being caught.
Like in big
Uh-huh.
So being turned out. So some of the videos that you've seen where Luke's been able to go out into open areas and catch them, there's still like it would take a challenge for me to make sure that I could go out there and challenge. In fact, I probably don't have enough of a relationship that there has been times where I can't walk out to a pasture and catch them.
Oh, that's so interesting.
You're not catching me game. So
right.
for Luke and those to have a relationship with him enough where there is enough trust to get him to turn loose to catch. It's still not the easiest catch, but for him to do it, it's definitely not there yet. And that's what makes him so tough, is that he hasn't turned loose to our idea yet of humans are worth being around. And then it's a very left brain type of behavior from a fear point of view. You know, like he's scared, like he's nervous. He's not sure about humans, but he's made the decision to do it. It's not that he gets himself scared and then goes, oh, I can't do this. It's before I even get myself in that spot, what do I need to do? You know, pretty good self-preservation anyway.
Right. Yeah, that sounds like a challenge. And it's interesting too that, like, Luke, you've been able to build enough trust with him that you're able to go out and catch him. It, like your dad's saying, it still can be challenging, right? But you can.
It's really hard. We've had moments where he like runs away and moments like that, but eventually you've gone to where we can catch him.
Right. And one of the things that I think is so challenging about doing what you're doing is you can get a horse to trust you, get really good around you, but then you've got to think about, okay, well, how can I set it up where someone else can come in and have this kind of success? So that brings a whole other challenge.
And that's kind of been working with my parents. Like, I do one day of catching, and then like somebody else comes in and does one day of catching and one day of.
Do you remember that? You want to tell Molly about that day that we had the clinic here and we had everybody in the clinic come up and pet on him? Remember that? You held him?
Yeah. So, what also helped is we had this one 5-day clinic, and then I would get fajita out. Then like every day or only one day?
Every day.
Every day we would have the students at the end come up and all pet on him one at a time.
Oh, that's great. So you guys had this clinic going, and you thought, oh, this will be a great experience for him to have. That's really great. Yeah. Very cool. What
was even more fascinating is as Luke was holding fajita and each person would just kind of approach us, we kind of gave him no setup just to see if he can go up there and rub on him. Out of the people, there was a couple where he really, did not like their energy for whatever reason, pulled away almost. And then there was 2 people where he actually walked forward and let them rub on him.
Interesting.
So whatever he feels, it was very interesting to see the difference in some people. Like, for the most part, he was hesitant, just like he is with us. There was a person or two that
I think it was the approach.
The approach, yeah. There was a person or two that he was actually interested in and would rub on, and a couple that he didn't want to touch him at all. So it's
interesting.
Great.
And can you remember what it was about that person's approach? Like, what did they do differently?
Nothing that we could really see in a future.
Very interesting.
And it wasn't just a soft person versus a like a carrot stick kind of person. It wasn't even that sort of a thing. It was even a few of if we go by that analogy, a stick person being really blunt, and a carrot person being really soft. The one person that he had a hard time with was very much a very soft person, carrot type of person. And then the other, then there was another person that was very quiet and introverted as well that he actually stepped into as well. So
that's super.
I could not pick out a difference even in the person.
Right.
Going, oh, well, it's clearly this type of personality or, experience or anything like that. So it was a bit of fascinating what he saw or what he felt.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. So Luke, would you have any advice for people out there that are wanting to improve their horsemanship? What would you say to them?
Well, it was really tough for me with Luke's littles, and if they kind of follow the Pirelli program, I think it'll help them a lot.
That's great.
And if they have a tough horse to kind of follow it, the Pirelli program like my dad, I think it'll help them out in being with the horse and riding and online and stuff like that.
That's great. So having a great program, finding a great program, and the Pirelli program's one of the best out there.
Yeah.
And then finding maybe some support from people like you and your dad and your mom. Yeah. That's awesome.
And Molly, be very familiar with the horse that I had at the center most of the time while you were there was Chica.
Mm-hmm.
Now Chica is 100% Luke's.
Oh, wow.
So that is his saddle horse now.
Oh,
And
that's great.
Well, I never would have guessed it. Chica had her own challenges throughout the time. I never really viewed her as that, but I never really thought that she'd be a good kid's horse. And I don't know that she's a good kid's horse, but she's Luke's horse. And she's definitely got either that mother instinct in her or something, but it's gotten to where now I can trust them to saddle up. And if we go and get cows, that Luke can go and canter out of sight from me down in the pasture and bring up cows. And I know that those pair are going to do really well and
It's almost
get
like
along.
she takes
So
care of me.
they take care of each other, I think, really well. So
that's really great. How exciting. That's really cool.
It's interesting to see how horses can change over the years and development as well,
Yeah, absolutely. Very cool. Well, thanks you guys for taking a little time out of your day to spend with us. And
absolutely, my pleasure.
Yeah. And we
much.
look forward to seeing what happens next with Luke's Littles. And I'll make sure to put your website in the show notes for people to be able to reach out to you guys too. So
absolutely.
Thank you.
Go through life with ears forward.
Yeah.
Love it.
What a treat it was to catch up with John and to visit with Luke. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. It reminds me of how important hearing other people's stories is. We can learn so much about ourselves in the process of listening. Thank you for joining in on this episode, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.